Boom! What's up, guys? Welcome into the Fight Bananas post-fight show. UFC Vegas 78 was yesterday, and normally me and John are on it. We usually have an awesome guest giving you guys all the breakdowns right after the card happened. Unfortunately, both of us were busy last night. I was working, and John had a hot date. So, of course. So, John, welcome into the show. What's going on, bud?
Yo, pretend like I didn't knock out, but I'm doing great, man. We're doing great on this side. The card ended up being freaking awesome. Like, what a card, top to bottom. This is why you don't miss fight nights. I mean, what was it, 6 first round finishes? I think 5 or 6 first round finishes. The entire prelims were pretty much all finishes. Main card was absolutely a banger as well. What a fight card.
I believe it was actually 7 first round finishes.
7 first round finishes, but man, like you.
6 on the under, one on the main.
So pretty good fight card overall, but it was headlined by like you said, Vicente Luque versus RDA, and we saw new layers of Vicente Luque's game that we have never really seen before. First of all, the takedown defense was spectacular throughout the entire fight. Like from round 1 to round 5, he started to nullify the takedown defense of RDA, and then it seemed like in those clinch situations, he started to feel like, hey, I'm potentially the stronger guy in these situations. I'm going to start going for some takedowns. And we even saw Vicente Luque, I think, get a career best 5 or 6 takedowns as well. So an excellent performance by Vicente Luque. He looks like an absolutely revamped fighter coming out of the fight a lot of last year, the injuries out of last year with the brain bleeding, all that stuff. Took the year off, revamped his skills. We knew about the striking. We knew how devastating and how damaging he can be as a fighter with the amount of knockouts and the amount of finishes this man has. But in this fight, we saw new layers. We saw a 5-round Vicente Luque. We saw a Vicente Luque that could potentially be a champion with a division that's now a little more wide open with Kamaru Usman's reign not being there. So let's get to your thoughts. What did you think about that main event?
Main event was good. Again, like I said, I was working during it, but I had actually made a 4-fight parlay that was ruined by Vicente Luque. I did have RDA winning, but no, Vicente came out and he put on a spectacle against a guy who is revered in pretty much all MMA circles. I mean, RDA is known for not only just being a legend in the sport, but also he has tremendous ground game, tremendous wrestling. He's good little boxer as well. So I say little, like the guy's not a grown ass fucking man, but no, good boxing. But Vicente was just on from the get go. His ground game against somebody who can have such a dominating pressure on the ground, I thought was actually very good. He showed a lot. Stash Mouth, what's up, baby? Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for commenting. What's going on? We back in the building. Might be a day late, but we never disappoint. But yeah, so Vicente Luque looked good. His jab was working and getting through RDA's standing defense the whole time. Did a good job. They did have a couple back and forth. There was a couple times where I thought RDA was going to finally turn that corner and start landing a couple, but every time he started to gain a little bit of momentum, Vicente Luque was able to nullify it and shut it down. Vicente proved that he is a top 10 fighter in this open division, like you mentioned. You know, that welterweight division is something that's always been super scary. You got guys like Kamaru Usman, whose reign is no longer there. You got Leon Edwards, Bilal, Hamza, Colby Covington, Gilbert, so all these guys. And I don't think any of those guys, I would say that Vicente Luque is severely undermatched against or overmatched against. So I think he's definitely solidified himself as a clear-cut top 10 and possibly top 7 fighter in this welterweight division.
Yeah, and to look at some of the guys ahead of him, I mean, you have, like you said, the Shavkats, the Hamzats as well, the Bilals, the Colbys. Those are the guys that are almost right up there next to that title shot. But the guys that are right below that, like the Jeff Neals that he lost to, maybe that's a rematch that he wants to get back. The Sean Brady's, the Stephen Thompsons, right? Those are the matchups that he can not easily, but like you said, he's not severely disadvantaged by the matchup against some of those guys. So I think for Vicente Luque, from the growth that we saw in that fight, not because we know about the striking, but we've saw some offensive wrestling. And for anybody that wants to be a legitimate contender, control time is a must, right? Unless your name is Israel Adesanya or Anderson Silva, you have to have some sort of top game or control game to be able to fall back on should anything happen. And we saw that tonight or last night out of Vicente Luque, which was something that we've never seen before. So, looking at Vicente Luque's next matchup, like I said, we mentioned a couple of guys. We know Colby is going to be fighting against Leon Edwards for the title. We're hearing maybe rumors of Usman versus Shavkat. We don't know if that's true yet. We don't know what's going on there. Obviously, that's all in the air. But who would you like to see Luque up against next?
So, okay, this is going to sound crazy only because Kevin Holland has changed divisions now. And let me just get it correct. Is Holland officially a welterweight?
He is officially a welterweight. He's ranked 12th.
He's ranked 12th. I still think that'd be a great fight. It obviously doesn't have anything that Vicente Luque would go after. Why would he fight somebody who's new to the division and is below him? I think the fight overall would be awesome. But as far as going forward, I'd like the Jeff Neal rematch. I believe he did just pull out of a fight.
Yep, he pulled out against Ian Gary for this weekend coming up.
Him and Gary were supposed to fight, which would have been an awesome fight. So I like that. I'd like to see him versus a guy like Gilbert Burns. Really, really test him, especially coming off of facing somebody like RDA, who's Gilbert Burns' most scary aspect of what his fight game brings is the ground game. Can you go back to back against two guys that are both deadly on the ground with pressure? I think that'd be awesome. Is it too high of a jump for a guy that's at 10 who just won at 10? I don't know. I think it's a good matchup. What do you think?
I think that's a great matchup as well. I think Gilbert Burns right now, I could be wrong, but I don't think he has anything to do coming up. Obviously, as far as, maybe putting two back-to-back Brazil versus Brazil, Luque might not feel the best about doing that. But when it comes down to making that title run, right, this is a guy that, dropped Kamaru Usman in the first round. This is a guy that, he beat, Neil Magny. He beat the Jorge Masvidals. He's got some of that name value as well behind him. So if you beat somebody like Gilbert Burns and you're Vicente Luque, you get some of that rub as well. So, I like that. Like Eddie said, Stash Mouth, Holland would be fun. I like the Wonder Boy matchup as well, because that would be a couple of fun ones. But I think the question as well is for RDA, is his time for fighting around the top? Do you think maybe he's now a name that you put on a pay-per-view as kind of like a featured guy on the pay-per-view, like how Tony Ferguson is, but not necessarily as washed as Tony Ferguson, guarantee? Where do you think RDA is in his career now?
Disrespect, man. I think this is one of those things. RDA has been out for what? A year and a half? When was his last fight?
I can let you know that in 2 seconds.
Because to me, he looked like he just needed, in my opinion, it looked like he wasn't super rusty. It was more just like getting back into the flow of the game. And when you're going against a guy like Luque, who is primed right now, he is on his arc up already. I just think that was a great match for RDA in the sense of getting back into prime form. He didn't look terrible to me. Like, there was no part of me that, like, when we watched the Tony Ferguson fight from a couple weeks ago, you and I both were like, you need to stop fighting, Tony. You don't look good, and you're gonna get hurt. That was not at all the case when you watched Dos Anjos last night. I think it was more just like, hey, I think he would be great on a main card as a main card draw without the main title without being the headliner for the main card. I think he'd be a great co-main. I think he'd be a great third to final fight of the night. Until he really pulls out a spectacular performance and shows, hey, I'm all the way back. I'm good to go. But yeah, I don't know if you make him another main until he gets a little bit more proof under the belt. And that's weird because he's clearly done it in the past for years. He's 39, if I'm correct, right? And when was his last fight?
December 22.
Okay, so he wasn't off for a full year. And who was it against? I don't even have that.
Brian Barberena.
Okay.
So a little bit, not as long, but I mean, Vicente Luque was out since, was out since August. And like Eddie said, they probably avoid Gilbert versus Luque. They are boys. They train together, unless it's an upper title or BMF, which would be dope.
Here's why I don't like about that. If you're one of the top, you gotta fight the top, dude. Rocky,
I get that, but also there's so many other matchups as well.
No, I know. I get that.
You know what I mean?
But I'm saying eventually they're probably gonna have to run through each other.
Yeah, eventually, but I think that's like a last case scenario. You don't want to fight your teammate, especially with there's almost competition within camps between each other in MMA, right?
Yeah,
You have alpha male elevation. You have of course American Top Team. You have MMA Masters. Like you have all these different
that are fighting against each other.
Exactly, right? So you don't want to ruin your own team's chances to have two fighters really potentially
Yeah.
work their way to the top versus, having one guy have to take out each other in like an eliminator style thing. But let's move on to the co-main event. And I just want to touch on this a little bit. I don't want to harp on judging because me and Blake, we've talked about judging ad nauseum on here. But what did you think about the co-main event? Cub Swanson, obviously on the tail end of his career, dude's a legend. I didn't think he beat Hakeem Dawodu. He didn't think he beat Hakeem Dawodu. He was even clapping before the announced judges' scorecards out of respect for his opponent. But he ended up getting the win, and he's not the Cub Swanson of old that we know and love, but he looks still pretty good out there. He's still holding his own against young, hungry Hakeem Dawodu. What did you see in that performance?
I Cub was one of the fights in my parlay, and I actually picked Cub to win. Very surprised when he got his hand raised. I thought there was flashes of old Cub throughout the fight, but nothing consistent. And Dawodu was continuing to land constantly, especially right down the middle. He outfought him, and again, I think those little flurries of old Cub were maybe enough to maybe the weight of his name plus a little bit of those old flurries were enough to really kind of capture some of the judges' opinions and go, oh, no, we'll give that to Cub. I did not think he won. I was, again, surprised, just like I think Cub was surprised when they raised his hand. Not going to get into the judging. So did it work out for me in the long run? Yeah. Was it a good fight? It was a solid fight for sure. We got to see a whole 3 rounds. Disagree with probably the outcome, but hey, it's the fight game. We talk about it every week. Somebody's getting screwed, somebody's getting fucked. So it is what it is. But I think Cub, again, kind of in that same realm of the Ferguson and Dos Anjos conversation we just had. I think he's a guy that you kind of make the doorman for the UFC. Somebody who's just like, hey, I'm going to fight some of these young guys who I have name value, and I'm not spent by any means. But yet, let some of these guys prove, hey, if I can take down Cub Swanson, somebody who's just such a veteran and can beat you with little veteran things other than just the raw speed and talent and the young hunger, let him take on that kind of a role if he wants. If not, it's all good. But yeah, Cub had little flashes, but it wasn't all, not the Cub Swanson that we grew up watching.
Yeah, man, definitely. But let's move on to that one. Definitely want to give a shout out. Hello, Tajikistan. We got somebody from Tajikistan over there. They got I think Mahmoud Muradov is from over there. I know Nurullo Aliyev is from over there as well. So they got a couple of young prospects coming up from Tajikistan over there. So appreciate you watching all the way from out there, my man. But man, I want to talk about Khalil Roundtree because we're seeing a resurgence in the career of him after losing, 4 out of 6 in the stretch from 2017 to 2021. He's now won 4 in a row, with 3 out of those 4 being by knockout. And last night's knockout was absolutely brutal. He's calling for a main event fight for a fight night. I think that's an absolutely perfect next step for him. And I think we're seeing kind of like what we saw with Jan Blachowicz, right? We saw him lose 4 in a row, was almost on the way out, ended up making a crazy run to the title. Not saying the same thing will happen to Khalil Roundtree, but he can have a run where he makes himself a threat or maybe even a contender, top 7, top 5 in the division. What were your thoughts on Khalil Roundtree's performance?
I thought it was flawless. I thought the power that he showed, especially against a guy like Dawkins, who has been in there with some of the better guys in this division, in the
Heavyweight division.
Yeah. Light heavyweight, correct?
Well, he fights that. This was his first fight at light heavyweight, but previously he had fought, I think, Derek Lewis. He has fought a couple of guys. He fought at heavyweight beforehand.
Yes. Okay. So that's why I was like, he's kind of fluctuated back and forth. No, I thought it was great, and it was a vicious left hand. I mean, he went. I feel like this was kind of a theme throughout the night. We saw a lot of guys landing straight down the pipe, and what he did was he actually set it up with a low. He kind of feinted with a low right body shot, but he didn't actually land it. And when Dawkins dropped his hand, it opened up a face shot and just boom, let it out of a fucking cannon and sat his ass down on the mat. That was one of the cleanest knockouts of the night, of just having a guy flat on his back. So, man, I thought that was awesome. I think Khalil also looks fantastic. I mean, that guy's physique is insane right now. So going forward, I mean, he's definitely got a shot to do something kind of crazy. I mean, I don't see, you got Reyes, you got Ryan Spann, Ozdemir, Anthony Smith. I mean, Johnny Walker, even up to that Johnny Walker part of that Anthony Smith, none of those guys really seem like, oh, that's just a bad matchup for Khalil. Any of those guys up into that 7th spot really look like, hey, Khalil could have a freaking nice little run here, depending on who they match him up with and how his camp goes and just how he keeps training. But good performance from Khalil Roundtree, man. Good for him. I like Khalil.
Absolutely. Now, guys, we don't want to get too deep into this card. Like we said, we're covering this the day after. So I just want to show a little bit of love to everybody right now. And me and Blake are just going to talk about some of our favorite performances out of the night. Jasmine Lucindo, 21 years old, getting the arm triangle over Polyana Viana. That was an absolutely spectacular performance by her in the main card. Marcus McGee with a crazy knockout, putting JP Bays right on his face. We got Terrence McKinney making the comeback with the first round knockout. I know you want to show this fight a little bit love. We got Isaac Dulgarian, crazy wrestler, took down Francis Marshall and absolutely bludgeoned on him, man. What did you see and what did you like about that fight?
So I want to give a shout out to Isaac Dulgarian because he actually trains here in Kansas City. He went to high school just down the street from me down here at, I believe, St. Thomas Aquinas High School. He actually, I believe he holds the Kansas state record. So he was a high school wrestler. Fantastic. I also believe he went to the University of Missouri for a year or two. He was a high school wrestler. In the state of Kansas, he holds the record for most takedowns in high school by like 300. Like, it's not even close. So I've seen Isaac grow up or, fight through the last three or 4 years in the circuit here in Kansas City on FAC, Fighting Alliance Championships. This guy, the Midwest Chopper, Isaac Dulgarian, he's been on the old show that I used to do, Rooted MMA. Such a nice guy, first off. Secondly, I have been waiting for him to get his appearance in the UFC. It was supposed to come last year. He ended up having an injury that he had to deal with. He was here when Dana White was looking for a fight. The Nelk boys were in town. He won his fight by just absolute knockout finish here in Kansas City at FAC. So knowing what he's done here in Kansas City, I knew as soon as he gets on the circuit in UFC, he's going to be a problem. And what the hell did we see yesterday? He goes out and fights against Francis the Fire Marshall. Absolutely, from start to finish, ragdolled Marshall, split him open, brutal ground and pound, amazing top pressure. It was nasty, and it was exactly what I wanted to see from Isaac, basically stepping up and showing the entire world or introducing the entire world to who Isaac Dulgarian is. I know it sounds like I'm fucking jocking him a little bit right now, but like, dude, I've just watched him put in so much work, and the fact that I actually get to see it on display and everybody else gets to see it too, he's going to be somebody. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with in that division.
Yeah, and I do believe he's 5 or 6-0. He's a little bit young in his career. He still has to, maybe test out that 3-round cardio. But man, the showings that he's had so far in his career, taking dudes down without a threat, like at this point, when you make it to the UFC, your opponent knows kind of what your game plan is. Like you said, Fire Marshall knew that he was going to try to take him down. He still couldn't stop him, and he still couldn't stop him from bludgeoning from the top. So definitely a huge shout out to Isaac Dulgarian for getting that.
I believe he is 6-0. All 6 of his finishes have come in the first round.
Right. Yeah. So he hasn't left the first round yet because he's just taking dudes down and absolutely rained hell from the absolute top. So big shout out to him. It's going to be fun watching him make his young rise. He could potentially be kind of like that rise that you'll see out of a Bo Nickel, but maybe not as talked about, right? Yeah. We've all talked about Hamzat Chimaev on his come up. Meanwhile, on the background, you had Shavkat Rakhmonov making the rise as well. But now people are starting to see what Shavkat is made of. Maybe this is what we'll see with Isaac Dulgarian as well. So I'm curious to see what we'll see out of that. But it's fun to see Martin Madej getting that Kimura in that first round over Josh Farisian. Jacqueline Amarim just destroying Montserrat Cariz. She took her down over and over again. She just did whatever she wanted to her in that fight. And at the end of it, it was just an accumulation of shots. She was sitting down on the top from Mount and just just raining top pressure down.
What about
Demond Blackshear
what
getting
about
the third. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just said, what about the toughness though from Ruiz? That's really the only compliment you can really give her throughout that whole fight. But the fact that she was able to hold on through like 3 different armbar attempts. I believe there was a submission attempt in there from the guillotine that she still got, or the arm triangle that she got out of. But either way, I was like, this girl just won't go away. She's not doing good, but she's not going away. I just thought that was impressive.
She lost it, right? She lost it.
Yeah.
It's the participation award for trying. But
Yeah.
Demond Blackshear, I want to give a shout out to him because he got the third twister in UFC history. So
Yes.
that's definitely something dope. And the way he set it up was awesome as well. DC did a beautiful job on the telestrator, just showing how he literally ate an elbow intentionally because she knew once he got that elbow around the back of him, he would be able to get that twister submission, and that he did. He even talked about trying to set it up in the post fight interview with DC, which is even more impressive for you to think about attempting a submission that's only been done twice in the UFC. Like that's top level shit right there. So shout out to Demond Blackshear on that performance. And then of course, Luana Santos with a first round knockout of Juliana Miller. There was another accumulation of blows there, but just another excellent fight. And like I said, guys, the entire prelim was just on fire. Out of all 7 fights, 6 were first round finishes. And it was just an absolute banger of a card. If you guys didn't get to watch this one, this has great replay value. You can watch it real quick. Honestly, it'll take you about 30-40 minutes to watch the whole thing because there's 7 first round finishes. It's a quick watch. You can watch it, get it out of the way. But we have UFC between Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley next weekend. Guys, make sure you stick it with us for the post-fight show next weekend. Blake, close it out, my man.
All right, boys and girls. Next week, like he already said, my man John, Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley next week. We also have Weili Zhang and Amanda Lemos, Neil Magny and Ian Gary. Neil Magny stepping in to fight Ian Gary. And Marlon Vera versus Pedro Munoz. It's going to be an awesome card, man. I can't wait for next week. And we haven't even talked about the undercard. Chris Weidman's on the undercard. Brad Tavares is on the undercard. Gregory Rodriguez, the RoboCop's on the undercard. We got a whole, Gerald Mearshart is on the prelim. Like this, it's going to be a great card next week. We're going to have a ton of fun watching it. We're going to have a ton of fun joining you guys, having fun watching us afterwards, breaking everything down and giving you guys all you guys want. So, John, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sorry for the quick show, guys, but we just didn't want to take too long the day after and make you guys wade through a bunch of bullshit. So for the Fight Bananas crew, for me, Blake Schneiders, you can follow us at Wake and Blake. Follow Jonathan MMA. We are